I smoothed the silk of my emerald green dress and glanced at my reflection in the tall foyer mirror. My fingers lingered for a moment on the chipped nail polish, a small, human imperfection I hadn't had time to fix. The chandelier's soft golden glow bounced off the polished marble, and I could hear the faint hum of conversations spilling from the dining room below. Tonight was my father's retirement dinner. Everyone expected smiles, congratulations, and a performance of family unity. I let out a quiet sigh, my hand tightening around the stem of my glass. Beneath the laughter and polite clinking of cutlery, memories stirred, echoes of rejection, whispered comparisons, and moments where I had been told I'd never measure up. A text buzzed in my clutch, and I stole a glance. "Don't forget why you're here. Hold your head high." My best friend's reminder, simple but potent, steadied the storm of nerves twisting my stomach. I could hear Dad's voice from the dining room, warm and commanding, greeting colleagues and old friends. I reminded myself, this evening, they would see the woman I had become, not the girl they had dismissed. I adjusted my posture, felt the subtle scratch of satin against my skin, and took a slow breath. Tonight, all those years of silence and small victories, hidden in plain sight, would meet the moment they had never imagined. I remember the summer I turned 16, the air sticky with heat, and the hum of the old ceiling fan in my childhood bedroom. I was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at my laptop screen, trying to perfect the coding project I'd been working on for weeks. My father, Michael Reed, had peeked in, his brow furrowed. "You really think you're going to make something of that?" he asked, voice calm but edged with doubt. "Why can't you focus on school like your brother? That's what matters." My hands had trembled as I closed the laptop, heart racing. "Because I want to build something I care about," I had said, forcing courage into my words. He shook his head. "Sophia, I love you, but you're chasing shadows. Real success isn't in coding or startups. Real children follow the path we know works." His words hit harder than he could imagine. I had felt invisible in that moment, dismissed by the man whose approval I had always craved. I remember retreating to my grandmother's porch later that evening, the old wooden swing creaking under my weight. She had handed me a small leather journal, its pages blank and inviting. "This," she said softly, "is where you write your own story. Don't let anyone make you feel less than who you are meant to be." The warmth of her hand on mine, the scent of jasmine from her garden, and her unwavering gaze had etched themselves into my memory. That night I made a choice. I would stop seeking permission from the people who doubted me most. I would start small, learn what I could, and carve out my own path. It was terrifying, yes. I was scared of failing, scared of being alone, but the fire in me outweighed the fear. And somewhere in that blend of hope and defiance, I planted the seed that would later grow into the life they never expected I could build. After that summer, I threw myself into every opportunity one could find. My high school computer lab became my sanctuary. Nights stretched long, the soft hum of my laptop and the scent of brewed coffee, my only companions. I was determined, hungry, and utterly alone in this mission to prove myself, not to them, but to me. It wasn't easy. I faced rejection after rejection. Local tech competitions told me I was too young, internships turned me away, and even teachers sometimes glanced at me as if I were dreaming too big. Each dismissal felt like a punch to the gut, yet each tiny win became a spark. Fixing a bug no one else could, designing a website from scratch, building a small app that a local business actually paid for. Then came Ms. Lauren Brooks, a seasoned software engineer who ran a boutique tech consultancy. She saw me one afternoon presenting a project at a local STEM fair, and her eyes lit up. "Sophia," she said, "you've got something most people never find. Let me show you how to turn it into real work." Under her mentorship, I learned not just coding, but how to navigate clients, pitch ideas, and negotiate for value, all skills my family had dismissed as unimportant. Late nights were filled with anxiety and second-guessing, but also quiet victories. My first paying client, my first profit, the first time I realized I could actually support myself. All the while, I hid my progress from my family. Birthday calls were brief, and holiday letters carefully vague. Social media became a tool of modesty. Occasional pictures of coffee shops, coding meetups, or travel, never hinting at the network I was building, the contracts I had secured, the apartment I furnished entirely with my earnings. I was invisible to them, yet unstoppable. By the time I turned 24, I owned a small but thriving tech consultancy, employed a team I respected, and had saved enough to live independently. I had become someone my teenage self would have only dreamed of. The irony was delicious. The father who had doubted my path had no clue that I had followed it to success, quietly, persistently, and on my own terms. And now, standing in the foyer of his retirement dinner, I could feel the tension in my chest shift. Soon, all that hidden effort, all those years of quiet triumph, would meet the room full of people who had never believed in me. And I, Sophia Reed, would decide exactly how they would witness it. The dining room was a swirl of polished suits, laughter, and the faint aroma of roasted salmon. Crystal glasses clinked as Michael Reed, my father, raised his hand to call attention. I walked in quietly, heels clicking softly against the marble floor, and let my eyes sweep the room. Every familiar face, from my father's colleagues to old family friends, looked up, smiling, expecting the same familiar, obedient Sophia they'd always known. I paused near the back, letting the murmurs wash over me. My father's eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and I caught that flicker of confusion, that subtle recognition that something had changed. I could see my mother, Karen, whispering to an aunt, and my younger brother, Ethan, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. When Michael raised his glass, he began the speech they had all rehearsed in their minds: praises, memories, jokes about office politics. I took my time approaching the table, letting the room take in my presence. My tailored navy blazer, the subtle shine of my cufflinks, the confidence in my stride, it all spoke louder than words. Finally, I spoke. Dad, Mom, everyone, I think it's time you saw the real me. My voice was calm but firm, carrying easily across the polished dining room. The Sophia you remember, the one you doubted, the one you thought would fail, hasn't just survived. She's thrived. I could feel the temperature shift. Colleagues exchanged glances. My father froze mid-toast. Thrived how? He asked, uncertainty creeping into his usually controlled voice. I gestured subtly to the screen behind me, where a slideshow began. My tech company, my office, our team in action. Figures appeared, contracts, clients, revenues, all carefully verified and undeniably real. A hush fell over the room. This, I continued, is the business I built from scratch. I run a team of 30, with clients across the country. I've owned every challenge, every success, and every lesson without asking for anyone's approval. I did this on my own. Faces paled. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Ethan's jaw dropped. My father's glass trembled slightly in his hand. I let the silence linger, savoring the shock, not for cruelty, but as justice for years of dismissal. You see, I said softly, letting a faint smile curve my lips, the real children aren't the ones who follow someone else's path. The real children are the ones who grow, who stand on their own, who don't let doubt define them. And yes, Dad, that includes me. Whispers rippled through the room. Colleagues nodded, some impressed, others stunned. Michael's expression shifted, disbelief to shame, but also, grudgingly, pride. He hadn't expected this. No one had. I took my seat at the head of the table, letting them absorb the truth. Tonight wasn't just a retirement dinner for him. It was a reckoning, a celebration, and a declaration. The Sophia Reed they knew was gone. The woman standing before them was unstoppable, unapologetic, and unshakable. After the initial shock settled like a slow fog, I realized the room had shifted. I wasn't just the daughter who had quietly succeeded. I was the one now holding the narrative, the power to redefine our relationships. I met my father's gaze first. Dad, I said calmly, I want to support you in this next chapter, but things need to change. I won't be ignored or dismissed anymore. His jaw tightened. I'll listen, he murmured, and I nodded. Here's what I need from each of you, I continued, feeling a calm authority I hadn't felt in years. Mom, I want you to pursue what makes you happy, your art, your passions, instead of living through expectations. Ethan, stop measuring yourself against others and find what truly excites you. And Dad, I want respect, honesty, and the recognition that my choices are my own. I saw the flicker of resistance but also understanding. They had been unprepared for a daughter who didn't just conform, one who demanded growth for herself and them. I'm willing to help, I said, my voice softening slightly, but only if you commit to real change. No more comparisons, no more guilt-tripping, no more defining each other by past mistakes. This isn't punishment, it's a chance to do better for all of us. My father's hand rested over mine on the table, a small but meaningful gesture. He had never asked for forgiveness, but tonight, I felt a willingness in him that I hadn't expected. My mother's eyes glistened. Ethan swallowed hard, the tension slowly melting into tentative hope. And just like that, the room felt different. I wasn't just asserting myself. I was opening a door, inviting them to step through it with me, but on my terms. The balance of power had shifted, yes, but not cruelly. This was about mutual growth, about respect and accountability. As the evening progressed, I could see the seeds of change taking root. Conversations were more honest, laughter less forced. I felt a quiet pride in my chest, not just for the success I had built in the world outside, but for the strength I had cultivated inside. I had turned years of hurt into authority, not bitterness. And in that moment, I realized the truth of what my grandmother had told me years ago. The real measure of a person isn't how much they are given, but how fiercely they claim their life, and how wisely they use that power to shape the world around them. The days after the dinner were quieter but fuller. Slowly, I watched my family begin to shift, not all at once, but in small, meaningful ways. My mother, Karen, enrolled in an art class she had always dreamed of taking. She painted late into the evenings, the lines of worry on her face softening with every brushstroke. My brother, Ethan, started a podcast on topics he cared about, his confidence growing as he embraced his own voice. And my father, he reached out more, asking for advice, listening without judgment, learning that respect and love weren't about control. I reflected on the path that had brought me here, the lonely nights, the rejections, the quiet victories that no one had witnessed. The leather journal my grandmother had given me as a girl sat on my desk, pages filled with sketches, ideas, and reminders that I alone was in charge of my story. That journal had become a symbol of resilience, independence, and self-trust. Sitting at my apartment window one evening, the city lights twinkling like scattered stars, I traced the worn edges of the journal. I thought about every hard choice I had made, every risk I had taken, and the woman I had become. There was pride, yes, but also peace. I had achieved more than I ever imagined, but more importantly, I had shaped my life according to my own standards, with integrity, strength, and grace. And in that quiet moment, I realized something else. Forgiveness, understanding, and boundaries were not signs of weakness. They were signs of wisdom. My family was learning, and so was I, that power and compassion could coexist, that love did not have to mean surrender. I closed the journal, breathing deeply. The city hummed around me, full of possibility, full of stories yet to be written. And I knew, finally, that the only validation I would ever need had been with me all along. The real children, I whispered to myself, letting the words carry, are the ones who rise, who claim their lives, and who never let anyone else define their worth. A smile curved my lips. That was me. That had always been me. And now the world and my family had no choice but to see it.